Thanks so much. So again, for the benefit of the recording, I'm Rhonda Burkhart from HCC, and we're discussing customizing of reports. So we'll go ahead and it will be on the report manager, where you can go and customize your reports. To customize them, you'll want to hit the view, the little eyeball there, the downward arrows for generating. The editing is just basically for the title of your report, the description, and the tag, which would be in the tag field, which is way over here. So I tend to like to put tags in there. We usually use the old classic terminology, SENDET, PO detail, but some, for examples. This will delete a report. Maybe you've created something and it's like, this isn't going anywhere. I need to start from scratch. You can delete that report. This will download a report definition. So if you have a really good report and maybe you want to share it with somebody, maybe you've got, hey, I've got another treasurer at this other district and they need this report. You could download that and send that to them. That is just the little template of what is in the report. It's not your actual data. So you can feel free to share those. And then this, I always say, don't forget to do this, is sharing your report definitions. You'll always want to share it with administrators, that's HCC, ITC staff, and then usually like a USAS manager, you might have USAS manager with password. Anything that says USAS manager, I advise you to check off. And then anybody with a role, if you want to share it with somebody, is a requisition status or a read-only status, you know, maybe like a invoice list, an invoice list, something like that. You know, it just depends. If someone has this role, then that means they can see it if this is checked. So always remember to check your reports. Okay, and then, so we started off on the handout. We just kind of, I'm gonna kind of go through some of the things on here. And so the top is where it says save as, and you can customize this. Again, as I said, if you're kind of working on a trial and error for customizing your report, you could put something like key or maybe your initials on it, or maybe this is outstanding purchase orders for a specific fund and save it. If you're hard coding that, it's always good to give it a unique name. It will also have a created by name in the instance, which will identify which one that you have created. The next thing is this select properties, and that is the screen that we are on right here on the handout. And even though these are in rows, they are actually the columns. So think of taking these rows and flipping them, and that is what will be your columns. So you'll have like PO number, reference number is the PO line item number, your vendor name, your date, the full account code, the amount of canceled, filled, paid, and current period remaining encumbrance. So those will be your columns. So going on to your sort priority, this is how you want the data sorted. So if it's first, you say, I want it to sort first by the PO, second by the PO line item number, and then that's as far as this goes. As far as sorting, we're just kind of doing something simple today. And then you can do ascending or descending. Do you want the oldest information first or the most recent information first? And then next is control break. Control break equals subtotal. So if you check off one of these boxes, then it will subtotal. So we'll go through later on in the webinar about subtotaling by PO number. And then if you subtotal, then anything in these functions will give a subtotal of how much that is. And it's like 99 times out of 100, you're going to use sum, but they also have average, min, and max as items that you could choose. 99 times out of 100, we're doing sum. And then these magical three vertical dots. There's a lot of things that can be done in the 3 vertical dots, and we'll go over that. And then, of course, the last column is to remove it. If you're like, this line doesn't provide anything, maybe I don't want to see my current period remaining encumbrances for some reason, then you would just X that out, and that will take that, just totally delete it off that report. Okay. And then when you're all done with your changes, save. And my thing is, just like Excel, save and save often. A lot of the time, it's like you'll create something and run it, and then, oh, I forgot to save that. And what did I change and how did I change it? So save it even before you generate it. So that's a good practice to get into. Okay, so we had these particular items selected, and this is what we came up with here. So it's like, okay, I'm kind of looking at this, and this is a vendor number and name. And so I'm looking, and I'm kind of like, the PO number is all the way over this side, my line item number is all the way over this side, and it's kind of crashing into that vendor number. And I'm like, you know, it's like, is this one right here for Perry Douglas 19210, or is it 9210? And it's, you know, it's just a little too much. Also with this, we're kind of in a double, you know, line format, because our account, full account code is just a little, the column is just a little too short for the length of the actual account column. So it's like, okay, I want to make my full account code column a little wider. And I'm thinking also with my vendor number and name, let's make that a little bit wider. Let's center the PO line item, and let's center the PO number. And then maybe it'll look a little bit better. So we do that by using these wonderful 3 vertical dots. And so this alignment right here, you can center that. You can select center on the alignment. You could also do that function, which is up here. So function you can do on that, and then you can also do the control break on that. So that's some other things that you can do, also using those 3 vertical dots. Here's that control break, and then the functions right here. So we were talking about doing the alignment, and there's also a suppressed. So if you notice all the way up here, invoiceable is here, but it's not on the report. It's missing from the report, but it's listed up here. So you can add things that you would like to sort or filter on. So like up here, the invoiceable, you can fill in true or false, you know, and then if it's suppressed, you won't see it on the report. So it's like, okay, I only want open POs. So I'm going to use it just as a filtering option. And I don't really need that on the report, because if I actually put it on the report, I know it would list a column, an extra column, and everything would say true, you know. So it's like, I don't really need that. I just need to know, I just need the query parameter on there, you know, and sometimes you don't even need that. And we'll go over that in a little bit too. So that is suppressed. So another item I'd like to point out is I had a district not too long ago, and they had a transaction date and then the created date. So one thing which we want to be careful of is with the transaction date, that's going to be the actual date of the PO. The created date is going to be the date that you entered it. So if you are creating your July POs in June, and then you're putting in this created start date of July 1st, it's not going to pick up any of those POs that you created in June. So just be careful if you're using a created start and end date or a transaction start and end date. And of course, that's why I put the transaction start date in green and then the yellow for the caution and the created start date. So there's a method there. So another thing on the 3 dots, you can see the width of this. And that is going to be, you know, we're talking about, oh, I want the vendor number and name a little longer, and I want the account number a little longer. So I'm going to just go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to go back on here. I'm going to show you what I did. So here we go. And so one of the things was the, oh, that was the other report. I keep having to move this. We want the POs. All right. So we were talking about our vendor number and name. So what I did is I changed that width to 25, make that a little bit longer, so maybe it doesn't wrap. Okay. And then on the full account code, I made that longer, wider too, to 32. All right. And so that won't wrap as well. So then it will be more single spaced as opposed to double spaced. And then we talked about the PO number, centering the alignment for that. And then the reference number, which is actually the PO line item number, I'm centering for that as well. So that's going to look a little bit better there. So let me go back to my example. Let's take a look and see how that changed. All right. So in this example, okay, great. So I'm starting with my oldest PO number, sorting that way, and then the item numbers here. But if you kind of look where it says 21, hang on, get out of there, 216509, and we've got line items 2, 3, and 4 there for Gibson Engineering. Like, yeah, you know what? I think I'd like to do a subtotal and find out my total for the entire PO. Okay, so, and I kind of spilled my cards there, right here. So right there, you can see I have a control break on the PO right there. So you can check it either here, or you can check it right on the report screen. All right. And then if we do that, like I said, now we're getting something somewhere. So we did the control break, and now we're getting our totals. So you can see here on this Gibson Engineering, you know, okay, now I've got a total of the amount of my PO, and I've got my remaining encumbrance for that PO. But one thing is, we're doing the subtotal. So I've also got this PO number up here on the top, but then I'm duplicating it over here. And it's kind of like, I don't really need it up here and down here. So one of the things that you can do is you can go into the PO number. And so you can do a suppress repeating. Okay. So suppress repeating will only list it once. So if I do that, I move this over here. It's this one right here. No, this was the original. No, that's a different one. Here it is. This is suppress repeating. Okay, this is a good example of this. So whereas we're looking at the 216509, we are getting that initial PO here, and then it's not appearing in the other one. So it will list it once, but then it won't list it again. Okay, so, all right. Maybe I don't just want to do suppress repeating, but maybe I want to do suppress. And of course, after you do these, you'd save them. All right, if you save that, and then you'd save your report. Save, 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 save. I want to keep these and hold them. Then, see if this is one. So here it's a little bit more spread out. So that's great. And so then your PO number's up here. So we'll take a look at this one. This Gibson Engineering again, 216509. I don't need it again over here because I've got it up here on my subtotal header. And then all I need is the 2, 3, and 4 to show my PO line item number. And then I've got a little bit more space on my report. It's good to have white space, you know, on your reports. It's not, so it's not cluttered, or repetitive information. You might want to, you know, you don't need the repetitive information on that. So this is a great report, and it's like, okay, I'm going to save this. So we save that because we really like that report. Okay, and the next tab over is the configure filters. So with the configure filters, these kind of look like, I call it like programming language, you know, the param, like the parameter, and then it'll give you the title that shows up on the query page, and then there may be an entry or there may not be an entry that appears in the field, and then kind of some language afterwards, invoiceable, true or false. So, you know, so an example of that, we'll go again to over here in the demo. So here's our example. And then if you go to the generate, and then on your query options, so you can see how I had the T there, and the T automatically shows up on that. Since this is an outstanding purchase orders report, we might want to keep that there. You could either use T or true, okay? So, and that's, yeah, I want to hard code that and I want to keep it. So then, once again, save the report. You can do some different things in here. And these also have, similar to advanced query, these have different queries that you can load in. So, so take a look at, I'm thinking, the date on here. Move this up again. So just kind of watch this date right in here when I upload that query. So I've got only fiscal year 21. See that? See how that changed? It auto populates. So you can auto populate some queries for these. You can do it this way, or we can use a save and recall report. That's another great way to customize a report. So as you can see, this goes 7/1/2021, and then the end date 6/30/2022. So I filled that in, and then I typed in my current fiscal year only, FY21, and I hit save query. And I also have the T in there for true. I did something similar with 500 to 599 funds. See what I did there? I wiped out that programming language, and then I put in a 5%. When you have this like function in the operations, you can use percents or wildcards. And, you know, we love doing the wildcards, putting some different things like that in there. It helps you get a whole, you know, group of, you know, funds or whatever. If they're all, oh, I want all my 500s, you know, you can get a report for that and save it like that. So it's just a couple ways that you can customize. I'll make sure I'm not getting ahead of myself here. So that's our save queries. All right, we talked about the T in there and hard coding that if you want to, instead of entering it every time. Also here, we're talking about the date, I used, another thing is dates shortcuts. If you don't want to use 07, 01, 20, well, in this case for demo instance, 2021, you can use a shortcut, as I call them, carpal tunnel savers, since it's less keying. F is the first letter in the word fiscal, and that stands for, in this case, in our demo instance, 7/1 of the fiscal year. And then fiscal, so the L would stand for the last day in the fiscal year, or 6/30 of whatever that fiscal year is. So you could just type F or L for 7/1 or 6/30. So date shortcuts are nice little shortcuts there. And then there's different operations. We talked about the like, which is that wild card, and we used the 500 funds as an example. There's a one of, and for this, it is separated by a comma, no space, if you want maybe 001 and 006 for some reason. Conversely, there's a not one of. So if you would want to, you know, filter out, you want everything but a couple of funds, you could use the not one of operation. Between is a very popular one to do. Again, with the comma, instead of in the grid, we tend to use, like if I'm in the grid and I'm searching for something with a date and I want like 08, 01, 2021, ... I'm going to use the dots for between. Oops, sorry. So then that filters out only for the 08, 01, ... between 8/31. But when I'm in the report, I'm going to use for between, I'm going to use a comma. That's where it's different. And then the one of, comma, no space, not one of, and between, you know, the same thing. It's the comma, no space in between it instead of the ... which you would use in your grid. There's also an is null. Is null means there isn't anything in the field. And conversely, there is a not null. So if you're looking for, maybe we're talking payroll, you're looking up something in payroll, I want anyone who has a termination date. I want a list of terminated employees. And so you would probably put like termination date, not null. You know, I want those terminated employees. If you want a list of terminated employees, just a list of them, then you would put termination date, let's see, I said not non-terminated employees is null, and then terminated employees is not null. So there's other operations, equals, that's very popular, greater than, less than, greater or equal, or yeah, greater or equal, less than or equal. Those can all be used in here. I also attached in the webinar this configure filters guide. So, and then up here, here's that nice example. This is period. It's period. So P is the first letter of the word, and it's the first day of the month. So if we're talking this month, it would be November 1st, 2023. D is the last letter of the word and the last day of the month. So that would be November 30th, 2023. So that's an example how to use those date shortcuts. That's listed here, and that's listed there for first day, last date. And then this is what you would use if you didn't want those types of date shortcuts in there. So where there's different shortcuts, you know, there's fiscal, period, or the top two. They also have month, quarter, I think they're like, if you want to use like today, one is like, I think it's T for today, I think. Well, we could get with you with that if you have something you want to do with that. But then here again, there's a one of, and you would use something like that and just examples. And then when you're in there choosing the fields that you want in your report, just be careful because like it can just say date, and you just want to be careful what it is. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you exactly what it is. So these all four say date, but we're talking start date, end date, invoice date, and disbursement date. So for example, this one, it'll pull over and just say date, but it's from an invoice item, invoice, date. So it's going to go invoice item, invoice, and date. And that's the date that we pulled over. This one is a disbursement item, disbursement, date. So that is, we're looking up a specific paid date. So I sent this out with a webinar. These are really handy. Like if you want to take it, you copy it, you go over to your, your space there, and then you'd paste it if you wanted to paste it in there. And so then it kind of eliminates, then you just kind of tweak it to what you want it to be. But it's, as far as like the quotes and the commas and the parentheses, that's all in there. You just kind of tweak what's in between all of that to get what you want. Okay. Oh, and I also wanted to point out, over here is where I was talking about, where you might have, like there's PO, there's a created date, there's a modified date, so there's so many dates. Posted date, yeah. So you just want to be careful, especially things like dates. You want to just be careful that you're pulling the right field onto your report. And if you hover over it, you'll see, okay, that's under PO date. So you can see which date it's talking about is your purchase order date. Okay, so that's the operations and the configure filters. And then we reviewed this. Here's a little snippet from that spreadsheet that I attached. Again, emphasizing for the advanced query, using like between as well as one of, well, especially with between, you would use the date, comma, no space, and then the ending date. Whereas if in the grid, you'd use the date, dot, dot, and then the end date. So that differs in that, okay? Another way that we can customize reports is using account filters. So this is great if you have something where it's like, oh, I want a report for all the grants, but they don't need to see salaries and benefits. You're making it for a specific person, and that's not something that they need to see. So you can do complex filtering, and then we can omit the 1% and 2% objects, but leave everything else for those grants. So I created a Fund 300 account filter for that. And then this wonderful little acronym, create, read, update, delete, pre-encumber, and encumber. So here's a look at that. Gonna maybe zoom, whoop, a little too much. There we go. So here, also with the funds, so we've got Fund 300 here, we've got it active. Anything you want to omit, then leave the CRUD, P, and E blank and list it first. And then another rule of thumb, besides leaving, putting things you want to omit first, is to put your more descriptive accounts next after ones you want to omit, and then get more general after that. So we've had some very complex filters. There's some people that, they might say, oh, they're in charge of this and they're in charge of that, but we don't want them to see this, and we've created some very complex filters for some districts in circumstances such as that. You can apply filters to employees under their usernames. You can also apply it to reports, which has been very handy for things. I've done some FISC webs for a couple of districts, and the filters have just made it wonderful. It's like if you've got the filter already set up from before, we can just go ahead and put that in there. Another thing, this TI, transaction indicator, in addition to all the rest of the account code segments, the TI. So with a cash account, you can only enter in, or you should be only able to enter in, fund and SCC. I've actually requested this as an improvement, that if you put in 00, only fund and only STC would show up. And then the rest would be kind of shaded in and you couldn't enter anything in there. They haven't gotten around to that yet, but it's been suggested. If you'd like to give that a little more oomph, then just feel free to submit that. And then they can add that as a requested circumstance too. That's the cash, only fund and STC. If you have like an object you want to put in there too for an expense account, then you're going to have to go into the O2 for the expenditure accounts. So like up here, like we did with excluding the salaries and benefits, we use the O2 and we use the 1%, the wild card, like for for just any 100s, any 200s. We don't want that listed on this report in this filter. Revenues are O3s. You have O3 in the transaction indicator. And that is just your fund, your receipt, SCC, subject, and OPU for your receipt accounts. So maybe if you're doing a RevLit or a RevSum or something like that, you would have some O3 lines. If you've got something that has a little bit of both, I would put, if it can't be done by the cash, then I would put in O2s and O3s in there. And of course, as you can see, we talked about getting the ones that you're excluding and then a very general Fund 300 after that. So that would be like the last line you'd have on there. Okay, and down here, we talked about the wildcards, and then this is the definitions of what they are. The C is for create, R for read, U for update, D for delete, P for pre-encumbrance, and E for encumbrance. And so these are those access boxes. And then there's another really cool thing. I want to show you about account filters here. These are under utilities account filters. So I'm just going to filter out for these. This is that same Fund 300. If you have a couple, maybe you've got a circumstance that you want to have a little more access, you can click these. Maybe you've got a bunch of accounts. You know, it's like, oh, I don't want to go in and change every single one and click, 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 click. I've got a bunch of them and I want them the same. You can go in, click the rows, or if it's maybe a select all, or maybe you select all and excludes the rows, then however you want to do it to select those, then you hit apply access. And so maybe I want to do a read and a pre-encumber. And then I hit OK. Watch how this changes. So now we've added the read and the pre-encumber. And then I want to save this as benefits included. And then I could save that as a new account filter. So I've got one that's just Fund 300, and I've got one Fund 300 salaries and benefits. So that's how that changed. So that's kind of a neat little trick there. Okay, so we went through that. I talked again about how the order is very important in there. Once, I mean, you got to almost think like a computer. Once it goes down and it hits something and it's like, got that checked off, then it's not going to look at the other lines. And we've had instances where, you know, it's found something and it's like, okay, I've hit bingo, I've hit it. I don't have to look any further because I'm a computer. And, you know, it's excluded some things that the user wanted on that report. So you want the excluded ones and then the more specific accounts and then the more general accounts in your account filters. So here's a financial detail report that I had a Fund 300 filter on that. So as you can see, only the 300s are listed here. Okay. Now, we have some where we've got them with these little beginning balance and ending balance subtotals. A lot of people think, how do I do that? So we'll go back and we'll look at that. So it's doing it by the cash account. You can see it's got the cash account and the cash account number, and then it's got the beginning balance over here on the right, ending balance there. So the secret to that is in those wonderful little 3 vertical dots. So first we're going to do the grand total for this. And so for that, that's this full account code. It's suppressed. It's got a toll break, or a control break. It's got a control footer. And for this, that's going to list it. I think I've got it right here. Right there on the bottom. This grand total. So it's giving you a grand total there on the bottom there. Okay. That's the grand total. The subtotals are, so this one was initial cash, and see that's initial cash up here, so that's where that's located. And then it's a sort priority 1. And my alignment for this is right, because I want it to the right, and then I want the description to the left. So this is going to be to the right. That's your dollars that you have for control header for your initial cash. And then this other one, the fund balance, that is your ending balance, also to the right at the bottom of your subtotal. So you've got your initial cash, your fund balance, and then you've got your detail in between for the subtotals. And that's your control footer. So the initial cash is control header. Your fund balance is your control footer. Both of these are aligned to the right. And then we've got the description. So the description aligned to the left, and then both the control footer and header are selected. So, and then all of these fields are under the cash account. So it's going to give you the cash account, initial balance, and it's for this period. Cash account initial balance, cash account ending balance for the period. And then it'll give you the description. And so let's see if that's that is, so like any of these, you can see that. You got, okay. So this one, that would be your initial for that account, and then your ending, because the only entry here is an encumbrance. So here, let me find one that's kind of all on one page. Okay, here's a good one. This one. Here's your initial. And then we had, looks like maybe a return or something of track shorts. And then, so the cash account went back up because it's a negative expenditure. Here's one right here. That's your initial for the beginning of the period. Then you bought some basketballs for youth camps. And so now there's your ending balance for the period. So that's how you would add those. So that's a really nifty one to have too in your reports. I like that one a lot. Another thing we can do is save and recall reports. So we went over the one with the query option within the report. You can also do a save and recall. So I've got this with an example of a Fund 300 and a 300 summary. So all I did was I dropped this down and I on a blank, and then I typed in Fund 300. I populated it with the name, the exact name of that account filter in there, and I saved it. I saved it up here with this little save button. Looks like an old school, you know, the little disk that you used to put in, not the old one, the floppy, but the newer old one. And then for summary, all you have to do is check this, and the summary will give you basically all the control breaks. You know, so it won't have all that detail. It'll just list all those control breaks there. So I'm not sure if I have an example of that one or not. I don't think I do, but we could probably run it. That was I think it was a FinDet. That one. So if you wanted to create a new one, you would click on this and just start, I don't know, 300 with salaries and benefits. And then you tab over, and then this will light up, and then you can save it. So I'm not going to do that for right now. I'm just going to show you. Here's the 300 that I created. And then I just put it in exactly the way it was. Sometimes it's nice to have that extra instance open when you do a duplicate instance, because then you can have one on the account filter and one on the report manager, and then you just cut and paste between the instances. That's nice. And then, of course, when I'm done with that, I save it. And then I could just generate that. There might not be anything in there because this is a test instance. And then there's a summary as well. So the only difference is that summary is checked. But we could set something up like this in your district or create a test instance, and then you can try that out if you want to do that. Of course, if you just use your own district, it's just grabbing information. And then if you don't like the report, you just go back here and you delete it if you don't like it. Or if you're in a, say you've got a, I don't know, we'll just say you've got an instance here. If you have a save and recall you don't like, you can hit that button and then just delete that out. And then that will wipe that out. You know, that's a bonus for today. Okay, so the next is the report bundles, and Sanders are covered. She's covered this topic a couple times in the past. So I'm just going to kind of review how that is. And then one report that I really would like to suggest to include in a monthly report bundle is the outstanding checks for all the periods. Because what is saved now is just the amount outstanding checks for just the current period. So if you set this up, we can help you with that, and you can save it, and it'll save when you close the period. So hopefully you're closing your period, you know, hopefully before you run your next check run, and then it'll have a nice accurate report for that. Because sometimes it's like you get a couple of months down the road and it's like, oh, I've got some issues, and then you've got to go back, and then you've got to kind of like work in the past and like, what was it then? Because I'm trying to rebalance or whatever. So you would hit create in the report bundles, and like this one I just created, month end report bundle. Okay, and then, or you can edit it if you have one as an example. And then you've got reports to choose from. And so in your selector report, sometimes it's like things that I've created. So I could just type in like Burke for Burkhart, and it'll bring up, it'll just like minimize my, my reports to choose from just to ones that I've created. That's the way to do it. You can also put in part of the words of the report, and that'll help it. Like, I'm looking for a financial detail. You can put in like FINC or whatever, and it'll just bring up financial details. And so only here under the options name can you see a save and recall report. So you can see that Fund 300 and the Fund 300 summary. After you've saved it, you cannot see it down here. So it's also a JIRA issue that I've requested. So that's a way to do that. And then after you've created your report bundle, so over here, report bundle. So I've created this here, review it. And then I could edit it if I wanted to add more reports. I added in both of these. Okay, this one does stayed over here, probably because I put it in the title that it's Fund 300 and Fund 300 summary. But this one, which is the outstanding disbursement summary with the all checks, that lists all the outstanding checks, that one just shows up as the same thing as what's in the, the regular SAFE report, which only has the outstanding checks for the current month. So if we change our report title, we can be able to see it. But if you wanted to add more to that, you just go down here, like, oh, because it's admin in this one. So I put in admin, and it only gave me the admin reports. Or if I do like financial, then it's only going to give me ones with financial, and see that has FinDebt in it, so that's why I picked that, and the other financial ones, then you could choose that. That helps you kind of whittle away which ones you want in there. So the next thing you want to do is schedule this. So you can see we've got this scheduled for an event. Now you can schedule report bundles for cron, which is a specific time. So I want to send my food service director reports every Monday at 8 a.m. and we can give you a little series of characters and numbers and things, which will do that. And it will set it up as a job in your job scheduler. And then you definitely want to be specific. If you've got two month-end report bundles, name them with a different name. Maybe this is report bundle 2 if I'm doing another one, something like that. And then if you're doing it for the this closing period, you want this done, I'm going to save these reports in my file archive every closing period. This is the lingo that you will need. that is also in the handout. You can just copy and paste. That's there. And then again, I want to save this in the bundle. You're going to have to copy this verbiage in there, a single notification, multiple attachments. And so when you close out your month, I'm just going to fast forward here. In your file archive, I did some closings. All right. And then, so you can see these guys right down here, they saved. So there's the three, that one's, the highlighted one is the summary, Fund 300 summary, and the Fund 300. And then the ones down here, one of them is going to be the one that is just kind of the stock standard report, and one is going to be the one that has all of the checks for that are outstanding even prior to the current period. So these will save, you know, just right in your file archive. And so it's really convenient that they're saved in redesign, or you can have them save right in redesign. And then, you know, it eliminates, it's a great spot for them to be. People who are able to access the file archive will always be able to access them. And then you don't have to keep them in your personal or your district folders month to month. And remember, oh, I got to run these reports or whatever. The system can do it for you. So as always, we're trying to get the, you know, everything to be, you know, work smarter, not harder, help you save time, and use the system to your advantage. All right, I think it's about it. There's more, just a little bit. So here, I've got it in the handout. This is where your event trigger needs to be, posting period close completed event. And then this is that month report file set, fiscal year month. That'll save it every month. Now, there's also, I've got a screenshot of what we just looked at. You can also do this for calendar year items or fiscal year items. And then we can also set this up if you've got something maybe in payroll that you want to send. Maybe you've got this kind of a similar thing with an outstanding checks or disbursements that you want at the end, at the close. We can set that up as well. But you can see it's a little bit different. Calendar year, close completed event, and then this is calendar year, same thing, fiscal year and fiscal year. So that's 14 pages or so, 16 pages. So that's what we got for today. I'm going to stop sharing and see if there's anything else, and I'm opening it up to the floor if anybody's got any questions. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead. Any questions? Right. We are always available to help you out. So just if you think of anything that you would like to create with this, or as I said, my number one thing is that outstanding checklist for the period. And that would be like my number one thing to add to that month-end bundle, since it only, it's limited to only the current period. I'd love to add that for any or all of you, so assist you with that. So if you've got any questions, feel free to submit a ticket, and would love to help you out with that, make your job a little bit easier and save you a little bit of time. So again, we will be posting this on our website in the usual spot under our recordings. And if we're not able to do that, we'll also put the link in a follow-up on the webinar. So it's been great having you all here, and I hope you learned something today. And just we're here to help you out, whatever you need. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day.